governs, Hammoah Agyemang, has stated that a significant number of projects under the government's flagship Big Push infrastructure program were inherited from the previous administration after being abandoned due to funding challenges. Speaking on the floor of Parliament earlier today, Agyemang said 23 road projects valued at about 14.88 billion Ghana cedis, originally awarded by the past government, were later absorbed into the Big Push initiative. Lincoln University in Pennsylvania has cancelled the scheduled visit of the President John Dramani Mahama just 2 days before a ceremony at which he was to be conferred with the honorary doctorate, with the cancellation linked to concerns over Ghana's Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. The Ghana Embassy in Washington, D.C. confirmed the development in a strongly worded statement on Tuesday, revealing that Lincoln University has communicated concerns raised by a group about Mahama's perceived position on the anti-LGBTQ bill currently before Ghana's parliament. And finally, the Minister for Food and Agriculture, Eric Opoku, has responded to the ultimatum issued by the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, defending the ministry's efforts to address the ongoing tomato supply crisis. Speaking in an interview, Mr. Opoku criticized the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana's stance, suggesting the association may not be fully informed about developments in this sector. And we have these and a whole lot more for you on our website, 3news.com. Grace, over to you.
Right, Christabel, thank you for the news summaries. Let us now get into the details of the bulletin tonight, starting from that conversation around government's Big Push program. And the Minister for Roads and Highways, Kwame Gavins Agbodza, has dismissed claims that most road contracts under government's Big Push projects were awarded through sole sourcing. The Big Push agenda is a multi-year infrastructure roughly estimated at around $10 billion, launched in 2025 by governments under President John Mahama to celebrate growth and reduce the infrastructure deficit. Key focus areas include building, upgrading and expanding road networks, bridges, railways and water systems. To create of the nation address, announced that 50 major road projects spanning 1,144 kilometers are currently underway at an estimated 50 billion Ghana cedis. The denial follows a publication by the Fourth Estate, which alleged that none of the 107 road contracts awarded over the past 7 months by the ministry were procured through competitive tendering, contrary to a pledge by the NDC government to minimize sole-sourced contracts. The minority in Parliament has already called for full disclosure of all contracts under the Big Push infrastructure program, citing concerns over transparency and fiscal discipline. Ranking member on the Roads and Transport Committee, Kennedy Osenyako, has been speaking on the issue.
The Big Push program is in principle a commendable initiative if adequately resourced and efficiently implemented. The project under this flagship program of the NDC government have the potential to significantly improve connectivity and open up key economic corridors across the country. It is important to recall that these are issues that the current government spoke vehemently about whilst in opposition. There is therefore a legitimate expectation that once in government, higher standards of policy transparency will be upheld. Unfortunately, the current approach appears to mirror the very practice that were previously criticized. This does not bode well for governance and undermine public trust. Transparency remains a cornerstone of good governance. Where processes are open and information is accessible, public confidence is strengthened and unnecessary suspicion is avoided. However, when Ghanaians perceive the decision have been taken in secrecy and things were done quietly out of public eyes, it inevitably breeds suspicion, and even in situations where no wrongdoing may have occurred, because of the lack of openness, creates room for doubt and speculation. We on the minority side are well aware of the average and the highest cost of constructing a kilometer of bitumen surfacing road. Similarly, we are knowledgeable about the cost range for asphaltic overlays. Depending on the thickness and the design specification, the scope of work, the same applies to dual carriageways. Accordingly, once the cost details of the Big Push project are made available, we can juxtapose with these established benchmarks to ensure that they do not overrun the expected cost ranges outlined above. Our position, therefore, is straightforward. Even after the award of this contract, they should be advertised. This is a major flagship program involving substantial public resources. About 50 billion of the taxpayers' money. Ghanaians have the right to know how these funds are being allocated, given the scale and significance of the program.
You've been hearing the ranking on the Roads and Transport Committee, Kennedy Osei Nyako, speaking on the issue. We'll listen quickly to the response from the minister, but we are also joined on the phone by Suleimana Brahima. He's Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, and they are publishers of the Fourth Estate. Mr. Brahima, thank you for talking to us. We would like to hear the minister speak, but we also know you're also running against time. And so let us speak with you, and then we'll listen to what the minister has been saying, if that is okay with you.
No, if you think you want to
bring in the minister,
that's fine.
Right. Let's just quickly listen to the minister, and then we'll speak with you.
Sole sourcing even is acceptable if in situations where there is the need to extend the implementation of works which were previously competitively procured to speed up completion. Though the 23 projects I talked about that we innovated, none of them were competitively procured. They were also source contracts, but which were innovated at the cost of 14.8 billion Ghana cedi. Mr. Speaker, given the scale, urgency, and national importance of these projects, a mix of procurement methods were employed in accordance with the law. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that only 44% of all the major contracts included in the Big Push contract were awarded by the ministry under sole sourcing. 44%. So not what has been published by a certain online portal. We have also awarded over 400 different contracts through open competitive bidding, over 400, which is unprecedented because the record shows that from 2017 to 2024, almost all projects that the ministry carried out were sole sourced. Almost all the projects were sole sourced. It will therefore be mischievous for any right-thinking member of society to conclude that the Ministry of Road and Highways only procures work through sole sourcing. Mr. Speaker, I have already mentioned the deplorable state of the road network across the country. We've inherited from our colleagues. This had brought untold hardship to the motoring public and contributed massively to the food inflation. This led to public agitation and the survival of the state. Mr. Speaker, something needed to be done and done urgently. Mr. Speaker, with dedicated funding already secured under the Big Push program, was both prudent and necessary to proceed swiftly to ensure value for money and avoid cost overruns associated with long procurement and implementation timelines. Mr. Speaker, most of the project would not have started until date if we hadn't adopted a faster route. Mr. Speaker, the following projects, for example, wouldn't have been continued or started. The Kaswa-Winneba and then Kaswa Interchange Road, which is in my good friend, the Minority Leaders constituency.
You have been listening to the Roads Minister, Gavin Kwame Agboja there. So, Mr. Brahima, if you can hear me now, let me just first find out from you what you uncovered in your investigation of this matter.
Well, first of all, let me say that this is what democracy should be. For me, it's gratifying that a certain online platform, as the minister describes the Fourth Estate, would publish something and he will run to Parliament to try and provide information ostensibly to convince people that the right things are being done. Number one, every information that the fourth estate is relying on is information that was obtained from the Ministry of Roads and Highways. And this was obtained not through any clandestine means. We wrote to the ministry and the agencies to say, as in exercise of our rights under the RTI law, can they provide us with contracts that have been signed, road contracts that have been signed between January 7, 2025 and January 31, 2026. So this was our request. And the ministry in February yielded to our request, provided in detail a list of contracts that they said they have signed during the period that we made the request, January 2025 to January 2026. And they provided us a total of 107 contracts, a list of 107 contracts, indicating the project name, so which road are we talking about, the name of the contractor, the amount involved, the procurement type that was used, the date the contract was signed, when the contract is supposed to start, when the contract is supposed to complete. So for each of the roads or the projects, they provided us these details. Now, we essentially looked at the data that they themselves have provided to us, and it indicated that 81 out of the 107 projects that they submitted to us, they themselves indicated in terms of procurement method that was used, sole sourcing. And 26 of them were selective tendering or restrictive tendering. None, not a single one, was indicated as having gone through open competitive tendering. So for me, unless the ministry is telling us that between February and today, when they released the information to us, they released the information to us around February 6th. Between February 6th and now, they have signed additional 290 or 280 something contracts. Otherwise, the question would be, were they lying to us when they said these are the contracts that they have signed? Were they lying to us when they said these contracts, 81 of them were through sole sourcing, and then 26 were through restrictive tendering?
The minister says if you want to put that in percentage, it is only 44% of the contracts which were awarded through restrictive tendering, which is like not a half of all the contract that will be giving out.
No, but I'm saying that the ministry gave us data. The data had 107 contracts that have been signed. 81 of those contracts were sole sourcing, and 26 were restrictive tendering. And this was just in February. So today, if the minister is saying that 81 out of 106 represents 44%, we all have to do the calculation. In other words, if he is saying that what he gave us, apart from what he gave us, there are other contracts that he has signed between the time he released the data to us and now. And therefore, those contracts went through whether open competitive tendering or restricted tendering. That then reduces the 81 to be a representation or to represent 44%. We have to know that. Now, the minister says that apart from whatever, close to 400 or so contracts have also been awarded through open competitive tendering.
Right.
That's very good to know. We will now have to find out where were those contracts published. Because if you say open competitive tendering, the law requires you that you make a publication at least in the national dailies.
Right.
So we have to look through and see when were those open competitive
published.
tender advertisements made. So quite obviously, it's either the minister is being economical, because when we interviewed him, he told us that the ministry resorted predominantly to restrictive tendering. Now he's telling Parliament that about 400 or so other open competitive tendering contracts have been signed. So why did he then tell us that the ministry resorted predominantly to selective tendering. If he had done close to 400 open competitive tendered contracts. So, I mean, this is just the beginning.
Yes.
It is good that the minister has come out with his, position on the issues. It allows us to interrogate more. We don't seek to bring anyone down. We don't seek to bring any government down. What we seek to do is to give the Ghanaian people value for money, to give the Ghanaian people what they deserve.
That brings in the conversation on winning the trust of the Ghanaian people. How does all of this, just like you said, it's just a beginning of the entire process. We know maybe more contracts are going to be signed, but how does all of this play into building or winning the trust of Ghanaians for this NDC government, especially looking at how the number of votes they won the election with and how Ghanaians are looking to see they do things differently from how things have been already done in this country?
Well, the government promised a reset agenda, which meant that we were not going to have a repeat of the abysmal performance of the MPP. And we have to hold the government to that. So today, the same people who, when they were in opposition, were crying about soul sourcing, condemning soul sourcing, this same minister in 2021 told Ghanaians that the reason why our roads are not being built is because the government has resorted to soul sourcing, which tend to inflate contracts. Today, he is justifying and defending soul sourcing. People like Sami Jamfi, who were so vociferous, stands before the microphones and says, in fact, the new angle that the MPP government is using to steal from Ghanaians is what is known as soul sourcing, and explains soul sourcing so well. Today, he is out there justifying that soul sourcing is not illegal. They claim the roads that are being done because they resorted to soul sourcing because competitive tendering would sometimes prolong the processes. When they were complaining under MPP, was it the case that competitive tendering at that time was such that they could just have a shortcut way of doing it? Was it not the same circumstance? Was it not the same Ghana? They say our roads are deplorable and constitute a national interest, a national security issue. Under the MPP, our roads went a national security matter. So I think that we have to have honesty. We need people who would say, when they say something is wrong, they say so because it is wrong, not because they are not the beneficiaries of whatever is happening. Right now, what we are seeing is that the people who were condemning soul sourcing today are justifying it because at that time they were not the beneficiaries, and today they are the beneficiaries, so they are justifying it. I don't think that is the kind of leadership we want under a government that promises to reset this country.
Right. So, what would you want to see done after here? I mean, your work has put out what you found. The minister has come to respond. The minority is also calling on government to quickly publish details of all of these contracts and all of that. What would you want to see done moving forward?
What will build this country is honest and credible leadership. We want to see leadership that when they say A, it is A. We want to see ministers, when they say B, it is B. If a minister was opposed to soul sourcing, and today, when he was a ranking member, and today he's a minister, and he's justifying soul sourcing, all I can say is that, look, contracts have been signed, the ministry provided us the data. Let us subject all this to thorough scrutiny so that at the end of the day, the people of Ghana would be the beneficiaries of whatever monies that are being invested. That is what I think we should all do. And I'm looking forward to a situation where our media will not just become what we call megaphones, just opening up the space for people to come and say this, say that, and so on. Let us all as media interrogate this issue collectively so that the Ghanaian people will know where the truth is, and we can collectively push for the interests of the people of Ghana.
So, would you want to see maybe the president or any authority call the minister and say, we're giving you up to this number of days to provide us with details of all the contracts so far? Are you looking forward to anything of the sort?
I will be surprised if the president decides to turn a blind eye or sort of become unconcerned about this development, because this is a major flagship project and so much money is going into it. Very soon, from tomorrow or thereabout, we would break down the values. People say, oh, there is no, you haven't shown anything to prove that there is, the contracts are inflated. I mean, how can you do, for example, a 9-kilometer road, which is, I mean, a feeder road that you are doing surface dressing, 146 million. And then in that contract, 37.5 million is allocated for the maintenance of feeder roads department headquarters. And that is not the only contract that there is an allocation for the maintenance of feeder roads headquarters. Why would we be doing this to ourselves? Why? So I definitely believe that the president will be concerned about this and will take whatever steps to establish what the truth is. If at the end of the day, what the minister is claiming is the truth, and Ghanaians are indeed getting value for money. There are contracts in this country that have been awarded for over 150 million Ghana cedis per kilometer. Why? Why would we do that?
Mr. Brahma, thank you for talking to us. You've been engaging Suleiman Abrahima. He is Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. They are publishers of the Fourth Estate, and they have the latest report out there on the government's big push agenda, making claims that some of the contracts have been inflated, and so government used only sole source and emission tendering to give out some of these contracts. So just like he's told us, in the coming days, they're going to give us a breakdown of all that they found out, and then you and I will also make our judgment on whether these contracts were inflated or really what we make out of all of these projects. But this is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's just do some other stories now. We'll take you to the Ghana Medical Association on that calling for tracking, real-time tracking of births, because we know just the no birth syndrome has been going on for a while in the country, and this is the position of the Ghana Medical Association. So major hospitals in the capital are once again under scrutiny over persistent birth shortages following the emergence of disturbing footage showing patients receiving treatment on chairs and on the floor at the accident and emergency center of Kolebu Teaching Hospital. The video, which has triggered widespread public concern, has been authenticated by the Ghana Medical Association, contradicting earlier suggestions by hospital management that the footage may have been artificially generated. According to the association, the situation is not isolated. It says similar scenes play out periodically across several major health facilities in Accra and other parts of the country, particularly during peak periods of patient inflow, bringing renewed attention to Ghana's long-standing no-bed syndrome. While acknowledging ongoing efforts to ease congestion, the GMA is warning that the problem requires a more coordinated, system-wide response. It is proposing key interventions, including real-time bed tracking across hospitals in the capital, stronger integration with the National Ambulance Service, and the establishment of a National Emergency Command Center to monitor capacity and direct patient flow more efficiently. The association argues that without such reforms, overcrowding will persist, placing both patients and frontline health workers under increasing strain. Let's speak to General Secretary of the GMA, Dr. Richard Salome, for deeper insight into the issue. Doc, thank you for making time to talk to us tonight.
Good evening to you and good evening to your listeners. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right, Doc, we know that GMA has already authenticated that video making rounds on social media. How accurately, though, does this reflect the day-to-day reality in major hospitals?
Well, let me start off by saying that you cannot begin to solve a problem that you refuse to acknowledge exists. And that is why for us as an association, we were disappointed that without verifying, the management of Kolebu proceeded to insist that the video that was making rounds was not true, and the CEO repeated same and said that could not have happened. And we think that Once you begin to proceed from that standpoint, then we probably might be coming to this conversation again, because we will not solve it properly. The issue about congestion in hospitals is a matter that bedevils us because of a mix of factors. One being the inability of lower facilities to have the capacity, be it human resource, equipment, logistics, and others, to manage emergencies safely, efficiently, in a timeous manner in those places as close as possible to the people. And so they are forced to refer most of these patients to the tertiary facilities or secondary and tertiary facilities. And so it results in dumping in these places. So no matter how many beds you choose to put at the receiving point, if we do not solve the issues at the systemic level and at the root, even if you put 1,000 beds in Kolebu, it will get to a point where those beds will be full and there will still be congestion. And so it is the reason why we say that we must tackle the issue holistically in a comprehensive manner to ensure that we don't have this happen. It often happens where people come to a facility from time to time where it overwhelms the capacity of the health facility emergency. For example, in a mass casualty incident where you have a bus and maybe about 20 people and the hospital has 10 people, 10 beds, they may be able to take 10 beds, but at that moment they need to act and take certain actions to at least stabilize the people before they are moved out to the places where they could also be managed. And so in certain instances, for short periods, you can have that happen across the country. We've seen that at Konfanoch, we've seen that at many places where people are managed in the trolleys. Sometimes ambulances have to leave their trolleys. And sometimes where it exceeds that, then people have to be managed on chairs. And in some instances, on the floor, whilst arrangements are made to move more stable patients to the wards and then treat those people in more dignified manner. However, in certain instances, when the wards are also full and there's no coordinated way that patients can be off-taken to nearby facilities, then people will be managed in such situations, which is regrettable.
You're making a case for, you're proposing the real-time bed tracking. How quickly can this realistically be implemented? And then how would you want to see this? Let's begin from how do you want to see this implemented?
So, for example, in many facilities, the wards operate in isolation. And so the internal medicine ward does not know how many beds exist where. And there's no centralized coordination of all the beds in the facility. So that we would know that at every time, let's say the hospital has 200 beds and there are about 10 free beds. And so that when the emergency is full, these 10 free beds, wherever they are, we can designate them to receive the overflow that has come. And who is manning these places. So that's what we say a surge plan. But without the digital real-time system to monitor this, it becomes people calling or knowing that somebody may have a space here and so. And that is why we are saying inside Kolebu itself, there should be that digitized real-time hospital bed management system. In fact, we don't envisage this to only apply to Kolebu. It should happen in at least all the large centers, so that whenever patients are being referred, what that does is that even before an ambulance moves, when they call, the emergency would know whether they have beds either in the emergency or outside the emergency within the facility that people can go, so that ambulances don't roam from place to place. Now finding out that there's no bed, which one leads to loss of time and may lead to bad outcomes for the patient. We believe that this can be done by softwares within the shortest possible time, and ensure that beds can quickly be scanned, barcodes can be used, and this can be done very quickly, and this can be deployed. We are informed that the ministry is considering this, and we are very happy about that. We also Okay,
the last time in the issue of Charles Emisa came about, we heard Dr. Titus Bayo in Parliament telling us that when sometimes we say there are no beds, it's not because there are no beds, but because there is a doctor who probably is done with his shift and is leaving, but there's a nurse who is tired and doesn't want to take on more patients. This system you're looking at will definitely demand some form of human interface. How do we ensure that when a nurse says there are 3 beds available, it is true that there are 3 beds. When there are 5 beds available, there are 5 beds, and not because somebody is tired and so wants to say we can only take 2 or 3 beds or 2 or 3 patients when actually there are like 5 or 10 beds available. The human interface, how do we deal with that?
I do not want us to go into the details of the generalization about somebody saying I'm tired, but if indeed a tired practitioner is not too safe a practitioner. And the hospital practitioners and doctors and others are working under extremes of stress. And people are working shifts that last 24 hours, 48 hours shifts. House officers are doing all of this.
Right.
And so clearly we need some revamping of human resource as part of this. I do not discount the fact that there may be people within the system who are not doing the right things. And those managements have procedures and other things in place to deal with that, and we expect them to do so. But we are saying that in this system, there will be people who are empowered by management to monitor the situation. They would go from ward to ward reporting the availability of these beds so that it is not the say-so of the ward in charge alone, that I don't want anybody to come. But there is somebody empowered as a ward manager, a bed manager for that matter, who is checking to be sure that these are available and that it is true that these are available, updating the records in real time to ensure that we have the people. But this means there must be some commitment from government to do so and make sure that these people are taking on and are doing the role that they are doing. And of course, there are in other places we have what we call dashboard or bed managers who monitor this, and that is their job. That is their job.
Okay.
We have proposed a mix of issues because, like a mix of solutions, because it is not only about the human resources alone.
Exactly.
It's not only about the beds alone. There's a need also for coordination. So beyond the hospital, before an ambulance comes, they should be able to speak to a central command that says that Kolebu has no bed, but this patient you have may be treated at Ridge Hospital that has a bed. So you move straight to Ridge Hospital.
Right.
And where Kolebu is full, they also know that Osha Hospital has 3 beds. They may not have an emergency physician to manage, but they are just 5 minutes away. And we can move an emergency physician to go there and assist them manage the case. Or if we have consultation capabilities, they may be able to guide them to manage the patient there in the interim whilst with 3 beds here for them to be able to move. So there's that need for that coordination as well. Of course, there's a need to expand the emergency centers across the country.
Doc, so let me just bring in my final one that you can wrap up for me.
Yes.
While we wait for the implementation of all of these solutions that we are sure can help us fix the system, what should we be doing? What steps can we take to reduce the incidences of no-bed syndrome and also reduce congestion in the health centers?
Well, like we have said, one is retooling the peripheral facilities. Like I was saying, there are multiple hospitals that are close by to Kolebu. Within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you will be at Osha Hospital, you will be at Kaneshi Polyclinic, you will be at Mampobi Hospital, and many other hospitals that are close by. There's a need to network these facilities at every point so that when there are overflows, they can be moved to these places. Again, there's a need to be practicing what we call reverse referral or back referrals, where patients come for surgery in Kolebu. The surgery is successful, the person is stable. He doesn't have to spend that 1 week of recuperation in Kolebu. He can move back to the referral facility where there may be space and be monitored there, discharged from that point with consultation between the 2 doctors or health workers over there. So that at every time you free space over there. When we empower the district hospitals and the regional hospitals with the necessary equipment, the personnel, logistics, and the coordination we've talked about, what that means is that majority of emergencies can be attended to safely in these places, and only complex ones that require more advanced treatment may need to proceed to Kolebu, Pomfanochi, and other teaching hospitals that we have. Of course, there will be a need to retrain staff on protocols, on also the need, the equipment that will be brought, etc., so that all these places can be able to take care of the patients, and so that we don't continually dump on Kolebu and the other referral centers.
Right, Doc, thank you for your time talking to us. Dr. Richard Salome is General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. This is Still Hot edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's do some other stories now. And persons with disabilities on Tuesday staged a demonstration at the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection over ongoing concerns about unemployment and delays in job placement. The group says despite several government interventions aimed at improving inclusion, many within the community are yet to benefit, leaving them without stable sources of income. The demonstration sought to demand faster implementation and greater transparency in the recruitment process. The spokesperson for the group, Gilbert Boateng, says their actions follow several attempts to engage government on their concerns, which according to them did not yield the expected response.
After the press conference, we did not hear from government, so we took it that government has probably turned a deaf ear to our demands. Hence, our decision to demonstrate today. So if we are here at the ministry today, we do not have much to say. The only thing that we want the minister to know is that we are here because of employment issues, and we want to hear any solution that she has for us today and never. Thank you.
Addressing the protesters, the sector minister acknowledged their concerns and assured them government is actively working to resolve the situation.
This morning, on behalf of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, and on behalf of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, we are happy to see you. We wish the situation was better than what we are having here. I think from what your leader said, you realize that it's not that there's not been engagement. We heard of this, and when we first engaged, the challenge was that you've been to the Ministry of Employment and you've not had any positive feedback. We looked at the issues of employment and the promise of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And so we looked at where the challenges were and how to overcome the challenges. One of the first things we said we were going to do was to have an instrument to collect comprehensive data on all persons with disability, the nature of the disability, so that we will know what kind of jobs that will fit their peculiar disability. We collected data on only your membership, and we have extended the same instrument to other groups of persons with disabilities. When you came, you wanted me to assure you of an ultimatum to employ all graduates with disabilities. And I told you that even if I promise you and you leave the Ministry of Gender, it will be almost impossible to get everybody on board same time. And so our approach is to make sure that as much as possible, once we analyze the data, the ministry is cross-sectorial. We handle this issue with the public sector, we handle it with local government service, and then also civil service, so that those who can be employed with their peculiar needs will be employed. The other one was to also look at available employment opportunities in the private sector, as well as some of the social interventions that the president has introduced. And so we
We've been hearing the Gender Minister, Dr. Agnes Na Mumu Late. Now let's go to the court. The Accra High Court has dismissed an application by former Deputy Director of the National Service Authority, Gift Yowari Mensah, seeking to halt the case until the determination of her appeal against the order to list the names and addresses of her witnesses during case management conference. Her lawyers filed an application to stay proceedings pending the hearing of the appeal at the Court of Appeal. Gift Yowari has been charged with multiple offences, including using public office for profits, causing financial loss to the state, and money laundering. She has pleaded not guilty and is on bail. Following the dismissal of the application on Tuesday, March 24, defense lawyers represented by Nana Benin Akon, holding the brief of Gary Nimako, informed the court of another notice of stay of proceedings pending the hearing and determination of the Court of Appeal. The appeal challenges the order of the High Court refusing to refer the case to the Supreme Court for interpretation. Gift Yowari's lawyers had argued that the practice direction on disclosure at case management stage, which compelled the accused to file witnesses, was in contravention with the 1992 Constitution. They therefore requested the case to be referred to the Supreme Court for interpretation and subsequently filed an application to halt the hearing of the case at the High Court. You're also listening to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We have sports, business coming up after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is still Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Grace Hammoah Agyemang. We know President Mahama is in the United States of America, and he is raising concerns over what he describes as a lack of global recognition of Africa's historical role in building Europe, as calls for reparatory justice gain momentum under his leadership. Addressing a high-level special event on reparatory justice at the United Nations headquarters in New York, he noted that Africa's contribution to global economic and industrial development has largely been overlooked. He stressed the need for acknowledgement of these contributions as part of ongoing discussions on reparations. Let's listen to President Mahama.
The legendary American jazz player Miles Davis said, and I quote, "It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play." When it comes to the contributions that Africa has made to enriching Europe and building the so-called New World, the silence is deafening. We have paved roads through mountains, we've put down railroad tracks, we've constructed buildings, laying brick after brick, we have cut sugar, cane, we've picked cocoa and cotton, we've descended into mines to unearth precious metals and stones, and we have wet-nursed babies. We've paid the price of admission with the blood of our ancestors, and still what greets us at the door is silence. What we're met with is mythology.
President Mahama there, tomato traders want government to immediately initiate contingency measures which will ensure local production of tomatoes to minimize the over-dependence on imported ones. One of the measures is the revamping of the Polygu irrigation dam. William Evans Inkum has filed the following report.
Burkina's government decision to halt the exportation of tomato to neighboring Ghana is known to these traders. Racecourse received tons of tomatoes from neighboring Burkina Faso for onward retail. Most tomatoes found at the Racecourse market were imported from the neighboring country. There are enough here. However, demand is low, contrary to earlier speculation of a possible consumer scramble for fear of scarcity. Although they contemplate of a future price spike, prices of the vegetable has remained the same for the past 30 days. Adrapepra has been in the business for the past 50 years, a retailer who deals in tomatoes from neighboring Burkina Faso. She fears price will soon spike, although demand for the vegetable has fallen considerably.
Ada say obema omo ankasa kita omo say private wine no omo betima ye omo je na abanso aye omo je a me fi say ebe boa ye because ye wasase wo ha ye betima ye afu na mela ye betima ye afu ada na ye betima ye afu ye wasase.
We have arable lands. Government should ensure we grow our own tomatoes.
Here is the unloading point. The leader of the tomato traders, also known as the Queen Mother, says importers are now running at a loss.
We
plead with the government to revamp the Palugu Dam so we can grow our own tomatoes in large quantities, not continue borrowing to the dictates of neighboring countries because we are in need.
As of last month, one bucket of this one was going for between 350 and then 250 Ghana cedis. Price hasn't changed much. It remains the same. But that is fragile because the traders are contemplating of a possible price hike in the next window. That is if the next consignment of tomato from Burkina Faso has price variation in terms of increments, then they will have no other option than to also increase retail price. But until then, prices of tomato remain unchanged.
William Evans Income with that report there. Time now for us to make way for business, and Bismarck Awisa is standing by.
Hello, good evening and welcome to the business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also coming up tonight, Bank of Ghana Governor warns Africa must integrate or risk fragmented growth, urging coordinated fintech development, cross-border systems and stronger policy alignment. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, has cautioned that Africa risks fragmented financial growth if countries fail to integrate their systems, stressing that the continent's future depends on aligning innovation, investment, and regulation. Speaking at the official launch of the 3i Africa Summit 2026 in Accra, he underscored the need for interoperable payment systems, trusted digital infrastructure, and deeper collaboration between policymakers, industry players, and investors to drive inclusive and sustainable fintech development.
But the next frontier is not just more innovation in silos. It is the integration of systems, markets, rules, and opportunities across the continent. It is about ensuring that progress in one market can connect meaningfully with progress in another, and that Africa's financial evolution is not pursued in fragments. Africa does not need isolated islands of excellence. It needs connected ecosystems. It needs payment systems that are interoperable digital infrastructure that can be trusted, and regulatory approaches that are coherent and enabling. All these can be achieved when institutions collaborate in pursuit of outcomes that are greater than any single actor can achieve alone.
Dr. Johnson Isiama is governor of the Bank of Ghana. Meanwhile, Minister of Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation, Hammoah Agyemang, who was also at the summit launch, urged all stakeholders to actively participate in the upcoming SIM registration exercise to help build reliable data systems that will enable digital lenders to better assess customers' creditworthiness and expand access to finance.
This is one of the key goals of our upcoming SIM registration exercise, which will allow for our digital lenders who are offering critical credit to SMEs to see and appreciate the creditworthiness of their customers. And that's why you must all take part in the upcoming SIM registration. The next phase of our growth must be defined by the integration of our systems that communicate with one another, coherent policies, and interconnected markets. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished governor, Ghana is committed to supporting this shift. As a government, we are advancing forward-looking regulatory frameworks that enable innovation while safeguarding customers. We are strengthening our public-private partnerships to deepen regional integration, and we are investing in digital skills and capacity to sustain growth in the sector. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a defining moment. Africa can shape the digital financial space to reflect our realities and our needs.
You heard that the Minister for Communications, Hammoah Agyemang, and that brings us to the end of business segment on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck Ausa. For more business stories, please check out our website, 3news.com. Andrew Sefa is here for sports. Please stay.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the sports segment here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 with me, Andrew Sefa Bamfo. Now, ahead of Ghana's pre-World Cup friendlies against Austria on March 27 and Germany on March 30, Communications Director of the Ghana Football Association, Henry Asante Chum, has provided an update on the team. Inaki Williams and Brandon Thomas Asante have pulled out of the squad, with Ransford Yeboah replacing the duo.
We are fine. Everything is okay. We've been here for the past 48 hours. Those of us who came from Ghana arrived Sunday, and then the players also started arriving Sunday evening. Yesterday, the rest of the players jetted in. So as we speak, we've got 25 players in camp. You remember that 26 players were actually invited by the coach, and then late Sunday through to Monday morning, we received news from Inaki Williams' team and then Brandon Thomas Asante's Coventry City that they picked up knocks during their respective matches over the weekend. So immediately one of the players who was on standby was drafted in. I'm talking about Ransford Honingsdorfer. Once we went through the process and the club agreed to release him, we got him his ticket and he arrived late last night to join the squad. So far I would say everything is okay. The past 48 hours have been very productive. We've had 2 training sessions. We returned from the second training session about 45 minutes ago. Today we had 25 players training. Unlike yesterday where we had 21 and then the previous day we had 14. So that is it in terms of update with respect to player arrivals. Thomas Partey came last night. Lawrence Atizigi also arrived last night. Antoine Semenyo arrived yesterday afternoon after his game on Sunday against Arsenal in the League Cup. And then the last two players actually to report were Alexander Jiku, who is based in Russia, and then Kojo Pompepra, who is based in France, who plays for Nice. So we have 25 players in camp at the moment, and all of them took part in this afternoon's training.
And so that was the Communications Director of the Ghana Football Association, Mr. Henry Asante-Chum, providing an update on the Black Stars. Remember that the Black Stars will take on Austria on March 27 before facing Germany 3 days later on March 30. Both games will be live on TV3. Also, a former France forward, Antoine Griezmann, will join Major League Soccer side Orlando City